Hi there. So we finally get to a video about content. So this video is going to give an overview of the lesson plan. I've started here just in the lesson 1 folder in the drive. If you click on notes and you click on note 1, it'll open up this lesson plan document. This is what you should, no matter what, always read before you teach a lesson. As I said before, the videos are optional, but reading through these notes is not optional, even if you're a returning teacher, because some of the stuff has changed. You've got to read through the notes before you teach the lesson. I try to make them very comprehensive, so comprehensive that they could stand on their own without the videos. So make sure you read through them, but I'll also make a video for each particular lesson of me walking through the note and explaining the activities and things in more detail. So note 1, lesson 1 is an introduction to the SAT and the first part of the writing and language portion of the test. As I'll go through in a future video in this series, the SAT, the new SAT, has 3 main portions, or the verbal portion of the SAT has 3 sub-portions, writing and language, reading, and essay, and we're going to start with the writing and language section this semester, which is different from the past. We started with the essay if you're a returner, but we're switching to starting with writing and language this semester. Okay, so at the top of this file you'll see some things you need to do before your first class, which I also said in decal. They're very important. The first one is you need to fill out your information on the Intro to SAT Verbal slides. A video below this in this series, or this playlist, goes through these slides in detail and shows you where exactly to fill things in, so make sure you do that. Second, you need to fill out your information on your syllabus template, actually, and email copy to Crystal by Sunday 9/16 at 11:59 p.m. How do you modify your syllabus? Well, you go over here and you go to Lesson 1 Intro and you go to Extra Handouts and you go to Syllabus Template. Then you can see this syllabus template. You don't modify this template. As I said in the previous video, you make a copy of this, either a copy in the drive or a local copy, and then everywhere that it says in big red bold ink, fill this in, you fill it in. Great. So the things you're going to fill in are your contact information, your classroom policies. The only policy that you must have on here is our attendance policy, which is that if a student misses 3 or more classes, they're going to be dropped. We don't always enforce that, but put it on there just to encourage students to attend and tell them that we will enforce it. And then fill in all the particular dates for your class. Everything else should be set. The topics are set. The materials just talks about blue books, and the description is the same for everyone. Okay, so that's the syllabus. And that's how you should modify it. So that's the second point here. The third point is you need to pick up your printed copies of your syllabus from the cubicle. Crystal will let you know when they're ready, and she'll make the right amount of copies for your particular class based on how many students are signed up. So that's everything you've got to do before you actually teach lesson 1. Then the lesson plan for the first lesson. Well, as I said, this lesson is sort of 2 things. It's first an introduction, and then we actually start going through the writing and language section. So the first thing you're going to do is give some introductions. And I should say I put here time recommendations for each activity. These are not, again, constraints. These are not based on any sort of scientific measurement of teachers doing this and taking the average. I mean, this is just me saying, maybe it'll take that long. And I've made it so that each lesson adds up to 2 hours if you add all the minutes, but things might not actually take this long. Things might take shorter or longer, or you might consciously choose to make them shorter or longer. And if you choose to change activities, the times might change. So just use these as sort of guidelines for about how long these sections of the lesson might take. So the introductions, I think, will take about 15 minutes. You're first going to start by introducing yourself, giving your students your contact information, and I would encourage students to reach out to you if they have any sort of issues. You are an authority figure in the class, but you're also there to help them succeed. The second thing you want to do is pass out your syllabus and walk through it with the students so they understand all the important points. The third thing is that you want to remind students of the Blue Book policy. That's also on the syllabus, but it's so important that I put it as a separate point here. So the Blue Book policy, which is new this semester if you're a returner, is that all students need to purchase a copy of the College Board's official SAT study guide. So in the past, we sort of printed a lot of materials and gave it to students, but that ended up costing PTPS a lot of money, and then we went bankrupt and it was awful. So now we're not doing that. We're asking students to purchase their own copies of this book, and we're going to use this as a textbook throughout the course. There's a 2016 edition, which is, I don't know, like 400 pages, and there's a 2018 version, which is like 1,000 pages, and either version is fine. The only difference is the number of practice tests they have, but we're only going to work from the first 4 practice tests, and those are in both versions, so either version is fine. A very important point is that if financial constraints prevent any student from being able to purchase a book, they should talk to you privately after class. That should not keep them from taking the class. PTPS does have resources to be able to provide a small number of students with books for free or at a subsidized price. So emphasize this in class. The students should talk to you. That should not prevent them from taking the class. And lastly, and very importantly, students need to bring their books to class every week. All the activities and the classwork that were previously on handouts are now going to be from the textbook. So they need to bring their book to class every week, and then they need to keep it with them at home every week because all the homework will also be from the book. So this book is very, very important. Students need to carry it around even though it's 500 to 1,000 pages, which is annoying. And the last thing you should do is take attendance. Do this every week. Make sure you do it the first week. If you don't take attendance, you'll get angry messages from Hyungil asking you why you didn't take attendance. Cool. So that's introductions. The next thing you're going to do is go through a bunch of slides. 3 separate slide decks. There are 3 separate videos in this series that go through each of these decks, so I won't go through them now. But I will say this is a lot of slides right in a row, so it's usually good in a 2-hour class to give students a break. You might want to go through like 2 of these decks, then give students a 5 to 10 minute break. 10 minutes might be too long, you might not finish. Maybe like a 5-minute break, and then start the 3rd deck. Yeah. And this first slide deck is just an introduction to the SAT, and then here's where we start to get into the actual writing and language content. The next thing on here is highlighted in blue. This is something new I'm trying this semester. If something on the lesson plan is sort of optional, I mean technically everything's optional because as I said you can change whatever you want, but if something is really optional, like I encourage you to not do it if you desire, then I'm going to highlight it in blue. So for example, this is a group activity. This is an activity that I've done in my classes in the past, but you might not like this activity. So feel free to change this however you want. But the group activity that I've placed here that I think is useful to do after going through the grammar slides is you divide the class into small groups. You tell them to work through the following questions from their textbook. These are questions that directly relate to the material in Part 1 grammar slides. If you ask students to do other questions, those questions will be about material you haven't covered yet. So stick with this set of questions. And then for each question, students should write down 3 things. The homework has the same sort of guideline of writing down these 3 things, because this is how I want students to start thinking about and approaching the grammar section. First, what do you think the grammatical rule being tested in this question is? Which rule is being tested? Students should not be solving these questions by feel, by, oh, this sort of sounds right, because they'll run into a lot of traps. They should be thinking rigorously, what rule is being tested? That's the first thing. Second, their guess at the correct answer. And third, their explanation of why they think this answer is correct, which again is really important. We want students to, think through, especially at this early stage, spend time thinking through why each wrong answer is wrong and why the correct answer is actually correct, based on the grammatical rules you presented early. So that's what students will do in small groups. Then you'll come back together as a full class, you'll debrief the assignment, you'll discuss the things I just said, and it'll be great and fun. Hooray. Then the last thing on the agenda is an exit slip. So in past semesters, I had these exit slips listed on the lesson plans, and it was like some questions you could ask students to write down answers to as they left, and I think like no teachers ever did it. I don't know. But this semester I wanted to sort of change this. I wanted to make these exit slips more refined than in past semesters. So the exit slip now, instead of just being a set of questions that students write down on a paper or maybe don't write down on a paper, are going to be put into a Google form each week. So you can write this link on the board for students. It's this nice tiny URL /PTPS/FA fall 18 FA18 /exit 1, and then next week will be exit 2 and so forth. And just in the last 5 minutes of class, make sure you save some time for them to do this. And they'll go here and they'll find this exit slip form, and on the form are a series of questions for students to fill out. The first one says what site or class they're in, but the rest of them are questions about the content you've covered that day. They are multiple choice or free response questions, but all of them are, they're not like essay questions. They're very short and they have correct answers. And this is set up as a quiz. So students can fill this out and submit and then immediately see how many questions they got right and, if they got them wrong, what the correct answers are. And these are just simple questions about what you've covered in class. And the purpose of this is twofold. First, as I said, to give students feedback about what they understood and didn't understand from a particular week, and also to give you feedback about what students understood and didn't. So let me go back to this page. Let me see if I just got through everything. Okay. First, so I'll go through in a minute how you can actually access that feedback. But first, if students don't have smartphones or laptops to take the exit slip, then let them just write out the questions and the answers on paper. You can just project the exit slip questions for them or write them on the board. And also emphasize to students that this isn't a test. We're not trying to, make them feel bad that they didn't understand things. It's really a feedback mechanism. That's all it is. And it's totally anonymous. We're not going to know who said what and who's getting things right or wrong. Then, you, after administering the exit slip, should examine the data. Now, because this is one exit slip and there's 7 different classes, that's a little bit difficult. You can't just do the thing you might normally do for a Google form, which is click edit and then view the responses, because if you do that, you'll get aggregate data for all of the classes, and that's not what you want to look at. So instead of doing that, what you need to do is go into the exit slip folder in the drive and click on this sheet, exit slip number 1 responses. There'll be a response sheet every week. And you can see here all of the, there's a column for each question on the form, as well as a score, which we don't care about because we're not grading, though it is interesting to see aggregate data about the average score, and a timestamp. And what you should do is sort this data by which site or class you're in. So go here, if maybe a teacher's already viewed this and done this already, but if you're the first one to view it, go here, sort it A to Z or Z to A, and then all the responses from your class will appear one right after another. And then you can go through and look at the responses to each particular question, see what students are getting right and getting wrong. You can also look at the scores. There's an easy way on Google Sheets to just sort of highlight a bunch of scores and do an aggregate function and take the average and find that. Yeah, so I encourage you to look at the results like this. If you know about computer science or data science, you could also download this as a CSV and do some simple table manipulation and actually analyze the data in sort of a nicer format. But if you don't, you can just sort of read the responses like this. Cool. I think that's everything on here. Oh, and then the last thing is, if you notice that a majority of students missed a certain question, like, oh, everyone got the question about double negatives wrong, that means you should re-emphasize that material in the following week. So take some time at the beginning of class or the middle of class to just re-emphasize, say, a lot of students missed this on the quiz, we're going to go over it again. Sorry, not the quiz. It's not a quiz. Don't call it a quiz to the students. It's an exit slip. It's a feedback mechanism. Okay, that's that. Then the homework. In the past, we've had printed homework sheets that we give to students, but as I said, we printed and then we went bankrupt, and so now we're not printing. We're just going to email the homework to students. Probably a good idea to also read out the homework during class, or maybe write it on the board, because sometimes when you email things to students, they don't check it, Yeah, so you might, at least for the first couple weeks, to get students in the habit of doing homework, want to write this out on the board. The homework for this week is pretty simple. Students are going to do the following problems on the following pages in their book. They have the 2018 edition versus 2016 edition. They're different page numbers. It's the same problems, but different pages. It's all listed here. And for each question, just as with the classwork, I want students to write out the grammatical rule being tested, their guess of the correct answer, and a brief explanation of why it's correct. And then they should bring evidence of their assignment to class next week and emphasize to students that evidence of the completed assignment is not circled answers, it's also explanations. Tell them that if they don't bring explanations, they won't get full credit. I mean, technically they're not getting credit for this anyway, because this is like a free class where they don't get grades, but if you just say that, it'll encourage students to do it, and I truly believe if students go through the process of thinking about their answers and writing down explanations, they'll internalize this material a lot better. So that's that. Then the final thing here is some stuff you need to do after your first class. And I said this in decal, but I'll reiterate it here. First, email students the homework assignment. Just copy and paste it from above, change it if you want. Then create a Google Drive for your verbal class. Do not give students access to this Google Drive. This is the Google Drive for teachers where you have like confidential information. No, create a new Google Drive, and if you have a co-teacher, create it together, make sure you both have access, and then give everyone in your class access to this Google Drive. You probably want to only give them view access. If you give them edit access, they can wreak havoc on your resources. I wouldn't recommend it. And then, after you've done that, you want to post all the Lesson 1 materials in the drive. You're not going to post like the lesson plan or the exit slip, but you will want to post the slides, your particular modified versions. You'll want to post your syllabus. I don't know, if there's a classwork activity in a particular week, you'll want to post that. You may want to post the homework on a Google Sheet. And then finally, email students or let them know in some way that you've created a drive, and let them know how they can access this. So that's it. That's it for this run through of the lesson. If you watch the subsequent videos in this series, you'll see detailed explanations of the various slide decks.